In blackest night and darkest sleep, with all our promises to keep, demons scream and angels weep within the bowels of the flame. A child cries to place the blame upon the parent who never came, yet everything seems to stay the same in the world of things unseen. The men who worship the uncrowned king will scream and yell and laugh and sing as bells toll for he who hears the ring, and all that's left is the darkest sleep. Hard to believe I wrote that? I wouldn't be offended. I don't exactly look the part. Perception is an integral part of our lives. When we meet someone new, we make hundreds of assumptions about them based on how they look, how they act, their accent, what if they're wearing makeup. Some of these perceptions will be wrong and some of them will be right. All of them change how we view that person. Another thing that changes how we view a person is when they tell someone something new about themselves. For instance, my favorite color is yellow, or I like cats, or I hate the smell of oranges, or something like that. For any of these small little bits of information, our perception of that person changes, even if it's this tiny little shift. For me personally, I have something that tends to shift people's perceptions rather wildly. Not because it's something grand that I did or some great accomplishment or anything like that. It was this thing that happened to me a while ago. So when I was 11, I had cancer. It was really not a big deal for me because what happened was I had been homesick with what we thought was the flu for a week. Eventually, my parents took me to the emergency room because we figured out that I couldn't even drink water. A couple scans later, the local doctor said that he wasn't comfortable performing a procedure for what he thought was a telescoping intestine on a child, and I was sent to the Children's Hospital in Kansas City. A 16-hour wait in the emergency room, an uncomfortable encounter with anesthesia, and waking up about a day later, and my mom told me that the surgeons, when they had gone in to fix what they had thought was a telescoping intestine, they had found a mass, and they had taken out the mass, but it was likely cancerous. A couple days wait for the lab results later, and it turned out that it was. It was Burkitt's lymphoma, a rare and fast-growing type of cancer. Now, I personally wasn't worried when I heard this information because the surgeons had already taken it out. I mean, there's nothing to be worried about there. But I still had 2 rounds of chemotherapy before I could go back to school. So when I tell people this, their perception of me tends to go from this to this. They tend to stop seeing me as the cat lover or the girl whose favorite color is yellow. How weird is that? Or just the singer or the actor or anything like that. They only see the cancer survivor. And I don't think that's totally fair because it's not something that I think really is a big part of me, and yet people define me by it. So I'm not really all that good at making speeches, but I do tend to write poetry, as you can tell from that rather dark poem I wrote earlier. So I wrote this poem when I was getting rather frustrated with how people tend to see me as suffering, even though it was 5 years ago and it really shouldn't affect me now. I don't know. I don't understand. But this is another poem that I wrote for this purpose. Suffering. Suffer, suffer, suffer. Everybody says suffer. Why am I suffering? Why am I considered suffering? They see me, they see an IV, a too large gown, and shorn off hair. They don't see what's really there. Suffer is everywhere, suffering all the world. Everywhere suffering, but not here. Suffer, suffer everywhere. Suffering man, imbalance in his brain, can't hold a job because he can't stay sane. Girl who eats and throws it all up and goes to the hospital because she can't sit up. So why am I, with my regrown hair, my scarred over cuts, and my laughter without care, why am I suffering? So that was a poem that I wrote while I was really frustrated. You can probably tell. But the point of this poem is I'm not just a cancer survivor. I'm not just an illness. I'm a person. I'm not this idea of some kind of child who can't get out of bed because she's too sick. I'm not an illness. I'm a person. And a lot of times when people hear that I had cancer, they don't tend to think of me like that anymore. And that's really not fair. It's not fair for anybody who is anything that people define them by. So my goal for when I tell someone that I have cancer is that they return with some story of, I don't know, how they broke a bone when they were younger because they fell off the monkey bars, and anything like a week-long flu or a month-long flu or something, because it's not, I don't equate my experience with cancer as this horrible, horrible thing that was super traumatic. When I think of what I had for cancer, I think of the cancer tricycle, which is this, okay, so the cancer tricycle is this story that I like to tell people about when I had cancer. So in the children's hospital, there was this playroom, and I went to the playroom, and there was this girl, and we kind of said hi to each other, and we decided to play hangman. I think I wrote like Fox and Socks for mine. I don't remember, but she chose sickle cell anemia. And I was like, how can an 11-year-old guess that? So she won. So later, we found this 2-person tricycle. You can see where this is going. So we found this 2-person tricycle. And, well, I wasn't very athletic, so she sat in the front. And we went down the hallway, and she was pedaling super hard, so we were going pretty fast. And since we had IVs, I got to hold the IV stands behind us. And it was pretty funny. But it was like, and our moms were just laughing as they watched us, because it was like this completely absurd sight, because there are these 2 kids on this 2-person tricycle, and it's about this tall, and they're just going, and then there's this tall IV stand, 2 of them behind them, and they're just going. It was, yeah, that's what I equate my experience with cancer to. But when people hear this story, they don't hear cancer anymore, which is good, because that's not what I am. I'm not just a cancer survivor, and neither is anybody else who has something that defines them by. For me, it's cancer, but for other people, it can be something else. But we are not just cancer survivors. We are not just cat lovers. We are not just singers. We are people, and everyone deserves the right to be thought of that way. Thank you.